Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Unleash Love. My name is Clemo Young, and I'm your host. Today, I'm going to talk with Claire and James Davis, who are a couple of Brit expats living in the south of Spain. I met them when I moved here, and they are amazing people. I invited them on really because they're experts in the area of physical health and fitness, and also the mental and emotional side of what we would call the midlife crisis, or that period in your life where you're starting to see, for the first time, really some slowing down of the physical processes of the biochemistry of our body. And it can be quite worrying. I mean, I'm starting to come up to my 40s now, and I'm seeing these changes, at least in the last year while I've been in COVID. So I'm not really sure if that's the body slowing down or if that's just COVID taking its toll on my body. But there are definitely those thoughts that pop up, and you can start to think when you hit this age, what have I done with all of this time? Why haven't I accomplished many of the things that I wanted to accomplish by now? Or maybe you start comparing yourself to other people, or you start thinking about the future and what it holds, and it doesn't look as clear anymore, perhaps. So a lot of questions can pop up, a lot of concerns, and really that's what this episode was about, was to kind of get a basis as to why the body starts changing and why we start to have these thoughts. And we did a good job of diving into a lot of that. So I think if you're in that stage of your life, or if you're coming up to that stage of your life, this is going to be interesting for you. So I hope you enjoy it. I won't keep you back any longer. Let's dive right in, and I'll see you on the next one. Tell me what the Midlife Mentors is as a brand, because you do a lot of stuff. So what do you do, and how did you start?
Wow. I guess we started because I'll rewind a little bit. We have another business called 38 Degrees North, which was or is a fitness holiday company, which started in Ibiza. The name comes from the latitude of Ibiza, 38 degrees. So we were really into like our fitness and our coaching. But as we were getting older, we noticed we were attracting a slightly older client base, and we hit midlife ourselves. And the real catalyst, I think, came from speaking to friends, our contemporaries, and then kind of being like, well, this is kind of it now, right? I'm just going to accept the belly, accept that I haven't got what I want in life, that I'm just coasting along, it's beginning the end. And we're like, no, it doesn't have to be this way. So that was the catalyst to start really digging into the research around the science of staying young, and looking at the holistic whole, so the physical side, but the emotional and mental as well. From that, we started doing the podcast, just us two chatting, and then we developed a whole program, basically using the research and what we experienced as coaches and PTs ourselves and from our retreats to start putting together this template that people could use to reinvigorate themselves for midlife, really.
Yeah, I think it's midlife is that time. We joke, don't we, and say about the midlife crisis, but it's actually it has really negative connotations. But it is a time of your life where you're reaching what we call the second act of your life. You're looking back and going, okay, I've achieved this. I might not have achieved this, but I've got this. And you've built this whole personality structure around yourself. You've got the stuff that you thought was really important to you. But what we find is at midlife, you do have this identity crisis, and you're like, okay, I'm supposed to feel really happy, fulfilled and grateful, but I don't. And also then I'm letting my physicality slide. I'm just feeling very lost and I don't know the way forward. So what we do with the Midlife Mentors podcast as well, but the 8-week program that James alluded to there, is take people through a mind, body and soul process of reclaiming control and reclaiming that focus and that excitement about life and that direction. So that's why, and it's a wonderful thing to see people sometimes come to us perhaps because of that midlife belly, can't lose it, the stuff I'm doing and my body doesn't look the same anymore, and then they come out with a whole new sense of self, and that's what we love.
Okay, right. Question: do you think that today it is a lot more, I would say the midlife crisis is a lot more visible to people, or it happens a lot more because of how society has become a lot more aesthetic and a lot more superficial compared to maybe like a couple of generations ago when there was no Instagram, there was no real television or anything?
100%.
Thanks to social media, we live in a comparison society now where, if you think 20 years ago, right, I always use this analogy, 20 years ago, you kind of knew your friends and you knew what was going on in their lives as much as they would tell you. You probably kind of saw your neighbours and you made a judge on kind of like, what car have they got in their drive? People didn't really do leasing and stuff like that then, have they done their house up? Now, you get to look deep dive into people's lives, but we forget only what they're choosing to show you. Got like 20-year-olds posing on their Lamborghini, throwing dollar bills in the air, going, "Hey, follow me!" But they just rented that for the day, and they're off like scurrying back to the bank to like repay the money back in as soon as they finish the shoot. So we have to be really careful. We live in this aesthetically comparison-driven society, and a really important thing as well. We felt that our generation, the Generation X, was kind of overlooked a bit. So everyone's focused on the baby boomers because they came through and they had all the property and all the money. And then the attention kind of switched to millennials as like the new group, and Gen X kind of got forgotten in the middle. So
we were called Generation
Squeezed.
Generation Squeezed, where we haven't got as much job stability. We've got more money pressures. We've got aging parents, younger children. The stresses and strains that you've just mentioned there as well about this comparison thing. It's a generation that we felt like it was almost like a lost generation, and we wanted to make sure that we were supporting them and encouraging them to shine and reach their potential.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I remember reading about Robert Pattinson, and he's the next Batman, right? He's already finished filming the movie, and I saw in the Liverpool Tower, like there was a stuntman standing there on the top. It was amazing. And basically in an interview, because he didn't get big. You know how Ben Affleck and all the other superhero actors, they go through this rigorous training routine. You know that better than anyone, I suppose. But he refused to do it. And I read that he was basically making a stand. He was saying, look, it's not as aspirational as people should hold it to. We should make a stand, and we should say, okay, let's try and portray something a little bit more realistic. And in his defense, I think this is a very recent thing. We bodybuilding is a very relatively young industry. It's a very relatively young thing. And if you look back, I think it was like Frank Zane. Is it Frank Zane? Or there are certain bodybuilders that started out and they don't have amazing physiques by today's standards. But at the time, it was like, who is this guy? Like, how does he have so much time how does he get big like that? And you look back and you think, wow, we've come so far in a sense. And I wonder where we're going. Even between Arnold Schwarzenegger and his Mr. Olympia years and Ronnie Coleman and his Mr. Olympia years, the difference is just insane. Like, it's almost like someone just took a huge syringe and just shoved it into Ronnie Coleman and like, okay, but yeah, I'm not going to take away the fact that he worked really hard for it and he's probably got amazing genetics too. But I'm just saying there seems to be this progression. Where do you think we're going with this?
Nowhere good.
It's a double-edged coin. On the one hand, I think, we're learning more about the science behind the body and how to better nourish it and train it for longevity, because it's about not necessarily just the duration of life. We're all living longer, although I think statistically we're the first generation to see a fall in life expectancy, like since the start of history, right? Life expectancy has always increased. Now in the Western world, it's decreasing again for various reasons. But it's about the quality of life you have as well. So it's about learning how you can move, nourish your body, and do the mindset stuff to stay on top of it. But on the flip side of that, you have got this thing, Hollywood now, the biggest movies, you look at the biggest movies, they're all these action hero movies, which, Ricky Gervais' famous Golden Globe speech was just like, who can take the most steroids? It's not about acting. And we're getting a very aesthetically driven society, which I think can drive people to feel like levels of unhappiness as well, and this feeling of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. So we have to be really careful with both sides of the coin about learning, what are the good steps we can take physically to feel our best. And we always say, dress, healthiness isn't a dress size, it's how you feel. But make sure we're doing the mental work as well. So we're not just obsessing over that aesthetic, But it's like, how do we feel and what is our purpose? Because, we all want to be seen, to be heard, and to feel that we matter. And that can sometimes be neglected. So it's that part that I think is really important we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we love working with people that we work with, because I suppose we do help people understand that it's about your legacy that you're wanting to leave here. What do you want to do with your life? And you can't do that. Your health is your wealth, right? If you don't have your health, you have nothing. It doesn't matter how many things you gather around you. It doesn't matter how many houses you have, amazing cars. It doesn't matter. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. But so that's what's really, really important to us, is to help educate and inspire people to be healthy, whatever that looks like in the mirror. But they need to be healthy so that they can live their potential and they can live the life that they deserve. So, that's what we're on a mission to kind of take it away from that. We say comparison is a thief of joy. That comparison constantly, and actually bring it back to the self, back to the soul purpose, healthy body, healthy mind, healthy soul, that whole holistic thing. So
yeah, really sitting with, what makes me happy, not what should I be striving to achieve, to do, but what do I want to be and what makes me happy in myself.
We always say, stay in your own lane. Know what your lane is and stay in it. You can diverge, but as long as it's your lane and you're not going over, the shiny object syndrome. Oh, look at that person over there. Or, we've got our own businesses. We're entrepreneurs, and it's that whole, this is how you should market yourself. Business coaches, the pressure to do certain things in a certain way really takes that individuality out of life. So it's about coming back to that sense of self, the sense of purpose, and staying in your own lane.
That's a really good point and a very important thing to mention, because I feel like culture pressures people to try to be the best at everything, and mastery can't happen when we spread ourselves so thinly. And I've been through this before. Like I am a generalist in many ways, and I feel like that's a blessing and a curse, because I know a little bit about something, but I don't know a lot. Like I'm not a master at anything, so to speak, right? I'm not like, there's a Netflix, I think, documentary about this sushi chef who, Jiro, and he has a restaurant, a Michelin star restaurant in Ginza Station in Tokyo, and literally is just walk in. It's a tiny place. You walk in, you're seated at the bar. He serves you the sushi one at a time. You eat them one at a time, and then you leave, and that's it. But he worked on that business his entire life, and that's all he did. And the whole documentary is about him and his family, and the kind of the change in how his son and his daughter see the business and how they've changed. And it's just a kind of like a way to show us, like, well, yeah, we've become more individually free and we have more liberty, but at the same time we've lost something in the process, which is that kind of staying in your lane, which is why I said that's a really important thing to balance. But in terms of, I wanted to ask you this also, in terms of the Midlife Mentors as a brand, I mean, there's a reason why, you're focusing on that. And something happens to the body, something happens to the mind as well. And I'm 38, so I don't know if it's happened to me already or if it's going to happen to me soon, but something happens. What happens to people physically, mentally, emotionally when they get to, like, say, 40 or 50? And what can we do about whatever it is that we feel we're lacking? Or, I wanted to talk about that.
We love this stuff. So obviously there are differences on gender, but broadly we can talk about some of the common themes for both men and women. Is we've got a lot of hormonal changes going on in the body, which then in turn trigger a lot of physiological changes. And of course, like, the hormones are regulating and interacting with our emotional centers as well. So the physiological changes can have emotional effects. We're getting less strong. We're getting less energy, so that can start to play on, our libido can drop. That can start to play psychologically. But also, hormones do play a role in regulating our emotional function in the body as well. So we have this kind of cocktail of things going on that we can feel, if we're not careful, that we're kind of depleting, if that makes sense. And that means depleting physically, emotionally, mentally. So that's what's going on. The good news is we can do stuff about it. So there are certain ways we can train our body to basically generate what we call hormonal response. So there's certain ways you can train to bump up levels of your sex hormones, of your human growth hormones. You can boost up your serotonin levels through your diet, through exercise, your endorphins through exercise. And really important than that is also doing what we call the mindset reps as well. So a really common mistake we see people making in midlife is they focus on either what we call the external or the internal. So I'm sure you've seen this. People are either I'm gonna go hell for leather on some crazy diet and workout program. So they're doing that, they get results for a while, but they're not doing any of this stuff in their head, right? They're not working on their beliefs about who they are. So deep down, they're still thinking, I can't sustain this. I still like eating an apple pie every day, and they go back. On the other extreme, they get the people something like, I need to find my spirituality, so they go and meditate for a month on an island or something. But then, of course, they're not doing the physical work. We're holistic beings, and they all interact. We have to work on both together, and it doesn't have to take ages. You can do it without making huge sacrifices in your time. You can do short, effective workouts, short chunks of mindset work. You combine the two together to turbocharge the effects. It's shown with scanning, we can change neuroplasticity in the brain. So that's what we do, teach people how they can offset and work with these hormonal, physiological, emotional, mental changes that are occurring at midlife.
And I think, I do a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal workshops, because for women, it is being talked about much more now, and it's great. James does workshops on the andropause, which is the male menopause. A lot of, we know from statistics with men and the suicide rates in men, particularly at middle age, so James is really passionate about doing that. But for women, a lot of the time we get to perimenopause and menopause and we're thinking, I'm feeling really emotional, some of the physical aspects, I'm quite stressed. Cortisol actually makes you hold on to body fat. They're drinking wine. They're not quite understanding the relationship between sugar and how they're feeling emotionally, but also how their body's reacting, because we become more insulin resistant as we age. So we're becoming more insulin resistant. So the sugar we're putting in our body, we can't process as well. So many things. And I love working with perimenopausal and menopausal women and helping them understand why certain things are happening, so they're more compassionate with themselves. But what happens most of the time is they go to their GP, they say, I'm feeling a bit low, I'm feeling a bit depressed. Here's some antidepressants. And I'm not saying that they're not valid. I was on them 10 years ago. They save lives. But it's about lifestyle factors, and it's about educating midlife people about what's going on and the changes they can make without huge sacrifices that will pay huge dividends.
You were on antidepressants 10 years ago?
Yeah. So I went through, people look at us. We always say this in our workshops. People look at us and they're like, oh, it must be easy for you. You've always been fit and healthy and you must have always had it together. Like James is saying, absolutely not. The reason we do what we do now is to share how we've been through the dark nights of our soul. And, I've been two dress sizes bigger than I am now. I've been 2 dress sizes smaller. I went through horrible divorce. I was put on antidepressants 10 years ago. So this is real life stuff. And I think the best people out there in the world are those people that have experienced it for themselves, are still working on themselves, will always be working on themselves, but can just share some of their love and passion and strategies about what's worked for them and works for other people that we work with.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. And I'm still trying to figure out what we're doing here with our businesses, my platform, your businesses around the Midlife Mentors, we're providing advice, support, tips, education for people who are ready to act on it. And so there's a ton of people out there who aren't ready. and they might see our things and they might browse right past them or listen to them and think, nah. And then they'll go through that process, and maybe one day they'll have that experience where they're like, you know what, they were right. Or, maybe this is just me trying to, like, reassure myself that I'm actually doing something valuable. But
You
they might one day
are.
actually say,
You
I'm just
are.
joking. But I mean, like, they might come to the point where what we say actually will impact their lives. And so I think, yeah, it's difficult to see people sometimes make the mistakes that you've already made and that are mistakes, like 100%. But like, I always seem to come back to this whole, well, I mean, we're only ready when we're ready. So you just keep trying your best to, like, grow as a person. What do you think about quick fixes? And I'm not gonna, this is not the silver bullet type of thing, because I don't believe in that at all, and I'm sure you don't either. But what do you think about hacks? What do you think about new technologies? Let's say Ben Greenfield. Do you know Ben Greenfield? He's probably one of the world's foremost body hack specialists. And he's a triathlete, crazy. He was one of my first clients for my digital agency. And he's just so, that's what he does. He investigates science and tries to figure out how to hack the body into being more efficient, not just on a physical level, but like kind of like on a mental level too. And I wanted to know, well, how far do you guys go? Are you working on the fundamentals? Are you working on those pillars 90% of the time? And then is like there 10% of what you do, which is like, this therapy is really good for like replace hormone, like kind of management? Or how does that look for you?
Well, we do the DNA stuff as well, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, we focus. Well, we love our research. Right? We're like all the time reading new research papers come out. So we love finding hacks and love finding new information that we can implement. But I think you have to be careful, because often like studies are small scale, and so we focus on like the fundamentals, because often we find people who got the fundamentals wrong. You were saying there earlier, people aren't ready. We all know prevention's better than cure. If you can get someone before they're at crisis point, that's amazing, and you can change their life so they never hit the crisis point, hopefully. Unfortunately, the nature of what we do is a lot of people come at the point where they're like, I need some sort of intervention now to help me either, physically and mentally, emotionally. So nailing the fundamentals is really important, because often that's what's missing. One or multiple fundamentals are off or wrong. But then once you've nailed those, there are hacks. Like we have little hacks put in all the time, like, our fasted HIIT training.
No carbs after 4 for women.
The way you train with resistance and fuel yourself around that to get the best hormonal response, stuff like that. So there is stuff you can implement. I think you have to be careful with a lot of it, because I think things like, people like Dave Asprey, and they're like, getting feedback all the time from devices, and then like trying to force power naps, and I think you can take it too far.
And I think sometimes, just from my own experience, you can get a bit, even we had, I won't say the brand name, but we had a strap, and it told us everything, right? This is this time last year, it told us everything. And being in the industry that we're in, we felt like we really needed to get something like that to get some feedback. James and I became quite obsessive with it. Because we're so fascinated by science, we became quite obsessed by it. So you get up in the morning and go, how much sleep have I had? And then you're already in that space of, I totally believe that our body, we're supposed to have feedback from what our body is like. We're supposed to have an understanding of how we feel when we do certain things. And I think a lot of technology takes that away from you, like that innate understanding and listening to your body, feeling into your body, understanding it and getting feedback from what it needs without some piece of technology telling you what you've done right or wrong or pushed hard or not pushed hard. And I think it's creating more separation between that mind, body and spirit, because we're relying on technology to tell us how we feel almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a great topic. I had this conversation literally just a couple of days ago. I was in Gibraltar, and I was being followed around by the smell of shit, but that's all right. That's another story. And I remember that I was speaking with the person I was with about how we should already know how much calories we need just by thinking about it or feeling it. We should already know what kind of foods we should be, our body needs, just by listening to ourselves. Like, when you have a craving, it's usually because your body's like, I fancy some vitamin C right now. So you've got a craving for like orange juice or something. Or sugar, right? I mean, probably it's sugar mostly when you're thinking about orange juice. But I'm just saying there's definitely, like, when I get a cold, I crave orange juice automatically. It's not a mental thing, it's a physical thing. And yeah, when you put technology in there, it's almost like you disconnect that. It's like a cutting the line of knowledge. I think it's an amazing subject. And if you look at the Native Americans, right, or any kind of ancient civilization, they're not really that ancient, I guess, but even just as far back as the Native Americans, they knew
Yes.
they knew these things.
Yes.
The ancient Chinese knew these things.
Yeah, and we've forgotten. We've cut off our connection to going kind of spirit, Mother Earth, the earth and what we can get from the earth and from the sky and the knowledge that our ancestors have brought down through generations and generations and generations. You've now got, makes me a bit emotional because you've put technology in the way now, and you are getting an emotional, physical and soulful response to that. Let's look at our children, even millennials, but teenagers now, they've almost so disconnected from nature and Mother Earth and all of that stuff. Like, they're just sitting in front of their laptops, their phones. They don't even know how to socially engage. They're socially inept, really. But we were all part of communities. We all had each other's back. We were part of something.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's not just like we've disconnected, but we've now established, unfortunately, artificial connections as well. If you look at stuff like, gut health, and you're talking there about craving. So I'm sure, like, if we were to go back in time 200 years and we were there, and we'd be like, we'd know our cravings meant we want this certain thing. But now, oh, I feel a bit down. I'm craving like a stuffed crust pizza with extra cheese on the top. So you'll gobble that. And we've started to make these artificial cravings, and the neuroscience backs this up. People who eat these like ultra processed foods actually develop new neural pathways in a really short space of time in the frontal cortex that makes them crave more of the same kind of junk food. And that's not a natural response; that's an artificial response that we're creating, like, now in real time.
Do you think we're at the top of this bell curve? If it isn't even a curve, I think it might actually be. It's not even a curve yet. It's like an exponential ramp up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an exponential ramp up.
What do you think the next generation?
Artificial intelligence. Yeah.
AI is going to change our world in ways we can't even see yet. And I think our food production as well. No doubt we're going to have a food crisis on the planet. And we're going to shift towards like manufactured foods. But in terms of how our bodies are going to respond to that on a hormonal level, is unknown yet.
And I think that's why we are so passionate about making sure that you are taking responsibility for your health and wellness, because it sounds depressing, but we're in for a bit of a ride. We are in for a bit of a ride. We're in that curve, but we're not anywhere near the top yet. I mean, it's going to speed up. And I think having a strong sense of self, a strong sense of your purpose, and a strong body and a strong mind is going to be essential for what's coming. And that sounds really, sci-fi and doom and gloom, but we really believe that having that control over your world is going to be absolutely essential.
Yeah, as the technology advances and as the automation increases, there will be more of a drive for that human side of business, that human side of just everything, really. And I think that's one of the reasons why soft skills training, for example, is just the number one investment for learning and development in organizations today. And that was even a couple of years ago. And I think it's just going to be even greater now, the difference, disparity in the kind of ways that companies use their money. So we're seeing a real shift now in terms of where are people's value in the economy? and it's shifting towards, well, how can I be more human? How can I be more in touch? Because we're losing it. Do you have kids?
No.
No, just a
Okay.
small dog.
Well,
Is
she's our child. She's just got fur and she yaps a lot.
Right. There's a. What do you think about the whole kind of thing that we've just discussed, and the future is going to be really hard? And has that influenced you at all in terms of like whether you're going to have children?
Yes,
Yeah,
but it has me from
yeah.
the female side. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, it has been a choice. We're very, blessed that we've not been in a situation where, we've both been married before and didn't have children. But I think we're both very blessed that we're aligned in what we think. But I know from my side, it hasn't always been this way. I didn't feel until, I suppose, my late 20s that I didn't want children. But I think maybe, being in touch with that wisdom within me, I think I saw how the world was going, maybe without even consciously knowing it, in a subconscious way, without even really knowing what was coming. Perhaps I just thought I would feel that my child I'd be worrying, and it's a world where I wouldn't necessarily want to bring children into it. And that's just my choice and our choice. But yeah, it's a strange one. I think our mission is, our work, I suppose, is our baby, but it doesn't feel like work, because we always say make sure that work doesn't take over. It doesn't feel like our work takes over, but it does feel like we have a mission on this planet together to do this thing. And as wonderful as children would be, and I do think sometimes, we might be missing out on something, but then I think about what we want to achieve, and I know it wouldn't be possible in our world if we had a child.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I think sometimes what you find is the people who have the biggest impact are the ones that dedicate everything towards their purpose. So the fact that you've actually found that and you feel aligned with it is a huge win. I mean, most people don't do that. It took me a long time to figure out that I want to educate and teach and share and like kind of provide a platform. It really only happened at the beginning of COVID. So I don't know when you guys started doing this. I think it was a long time ago, right? So congratulations on everything for sticking to it that long.
Thank you.
Congratulations for all the great work you're doing.
You're doing
as well.
amazing work. Absolutely, like the stuff you put on Instagram. I always like it. It's beautiful, and it's genuine as well. Us talking about that social media thing. Sometimes there's so much faux positivity, isn't there? There's this faux spirituality as well, and you can see it and you can feel it. And yours is so authentic. So huge, well done. What you're doing is a beautiful thing.
Thank you. That means a lot. And I would love to ask you more and more questions, but I think obviously we're coming to the end of it. So how do people find you online, and how do people get in touch with you?
Okay. So you can go to our website, which is themidlifementors.com, all one word.
With an S at the end, Midlife Mentors.
Mentors. You can drop us an email, team@themidlifementors.com. You can find our podcast on pretty much all the platforms, I think. It's just called The Midlife Mentors. And if you go on Facebook, we have the Midlife Mentors community. Just type Midlife Mentors community. It's a free group. We've got like hundreds of people in there. We're dropping content in there all the time, supporting people.
Yeah.
Just a good place to hang out.
Yeah, and we are also running a retreat next week. This is our other business, 38 Degrees North. This is our legacy business. But obviously when COVID hit, we weren't able to do any travel stuff. So we are running our first retreat. Hopefully we'll be able to run more retreats, actually. That's 38 Degrees North, all written. But yeah, we're running our first one next week.
We are
very excited. Very excited.
First real retreat in 18 months.
Well, we get our energy off of people. It's lovely doing stuff online, and we've connected with so many wonderful people. But a lot of the people that are coming on our retreat next week are actually people that we've never met, but have been through our 8-week Midlife Method program. So it's going to be the first time we're meeting them. So a little bit excited, aren't we?
We are.
It's a little bit.
Where is that going to happen? Is that London as well?
It was in Sussex, so just outside London. Yeah, got on a farmhouse estate in Sussex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah, things are starting to somehow get back to some kind of normal, which is nice. And these events, they're so, oh my God, a year or more of Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom
it
is
makes
the
you
real
crazy.
thing.
Yeah.
One day we'll be able to do this in person soon. When you get back to
Can't wait to
Spain,
meet you
we
in
can have
person.
another
Oh.
episode about 38 degrees north.
Yeah.
Can't wait to grab some tapas and a canya with you.
Yeah, come over. It's beautiful. The connections we've made on over the last 18 months have been incredible. But yeah, I think everyone, well, from our side, we're just really, really craving that connection in real time with people. So so hopefully we can do that with you at some point as well.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely, 100%. Just let me know. Thanks so much for coming and talking to me. It's been something I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm so glad we did it. We can do another one. And yeah, until then, enjoy. Have an amazing time.
Thank you very much, and you. Take care.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe today and you won't miss the next episode. We cover topics like recovering from infidelity, online dating, managing chronic anxiety, and so much more. We're on all the popular platforms, so take your pick, and we'll see you soon.